In this section, you will learn how to stabilize a shaky video and how to use the blur tab and the sizing tab, how to track using cloud tracking or point tracking. DaVinci has one of the best trackers in the video industry. It's very efficient and usually used with Windows to track certain regions for the purpose of color grading or even color correction. Stabilizing your video. We have here a pretty shaky video and we want to stabilize it. To stabilize your video, you will come to Tracker, and then from the tracker, the options here, Window, Stabilizer, you select Stabilizer. Now this is the Stabilize button. It will analyze and stabilize your video in one click. You have three modes to stabilize: perspective, similarity, and translation. Each one of them will give you a different result depending on your footage. So if perspective is not the result that you want, you can choose similarity or translation. I will stick to perspective and click on stabilize to stabilize the video. Notice it's analyzing and stabilizing at the same time. Let's go to the beginning and play our video and see the result. You have here the option for camera lock. If you check it, DaVinci Resolve is going to assume that your camera has been on a tripod, is not moving at all. I will uncheck it and play the video. I want you to notice behind here how the door is moving. Okay, so the camera is moving. Now let's put it on a tripod. That's camera lock. Stabilize again. And if you play, you will notice now behind here there is no movement at all from the door, or very smooth movement. That's because the camera is considered to be on a tripod. How does the DaVinci Resolve work on your video to stabilize it? Let's play the video a bit. I will disable stabilization, bypass it. You notice that when I enable it, there is a kind of zoom. Notice this is without it and this with it. If you remove the zoom and keep the stabilization, if you play, you will notice that it's actually moving your video in 3D space and you have these black areas here. And with the zoom on, they will be cropped out, and of course there is a zoom in. If you remove the camera lock, you will have two options here that will be highlighted. The cropping ratio. This is how much it's allowed to crop to fix the zoom. For example, if I take it towards 1, you notice now it did not crop so much, it adjusted the zoom so you have more shakiness. If you take it to 0.25, that's the maximum in our case, stabilize it again. You notice now the cropping is at its maximum and there is quite some stability. For this video, for example, we can go for camera lock. That's what we should have done. Put it on the tripod and then stabilize. And here you are, you have a perfectly still video and it's quite fast to use the stabilization. So this is about stabilization, and I hope it was useful for you. If you have any shaky video, you can use it from over here. In DaVinci Resolve, you have the possibility to add windows and to track these windows using the tracker. So within the tracker, you don't go to Stabilizer of FX, you go to Window. Let's do an example. Let's add the window first. We will add a circle and just make it bigger to cover all her face. Let's make the feathering even bigger, or the softness. Let's rotate it a bit. So you adjust your window. Notice I am on the first frame. So now let's say this is okay. This is what you want to track, and make it a bit bigger. Take it down and get her chin. And okay, I think this is cool a bit. Not much. I would work on it more, but that's okay for our example. After you set up the window, you go to the tracker. And from the frame where you have set your window, you start tracking. You can track backward or forward. In our case, we are going to track forward because we are on the first frame. And you can track the pan, the tilt, the zoom, the rotate, and the 3D. Actually, you have two kinds of trackers, the cloud tracker and the point tracker. And you have clip and frame. Actually, you will use this after you have done the tracking. I will click to track. And notice these small crosses here are the tracking points. And DaVinci is using them to track her face. Some of them are outside the area that you are interested in. You could eliminate them. We see that later. It's no big deal. In fact, it's going to track it at 100%. Now it has finished tracking. So you can come back and play your video. I will play backward to show you. And notice that the window is quite stuck to her face the way we have adjusted. Now you notice here you have your tracking data. The purple one is about the zoom, and actually it hasn't been used at all. If you zoom in just from here, you will notice that you have the other tracking data. You have the pan, green, the tilt that is somehow blue, and you have the zoom, it went up, and you have the rotate over here, and 3D does not exist because we don't have any 3D. So now you have done the tracking, but somehow down there you want to adjust the window a bit. You have two options. You have the clip and the frame options. If you are on the clip option and you adjust it, it's gonna adjust on the whole clip. So if you go backward or forward, wherever you go, the adjustment that you have done to the window will be for the whole clip. I will undo that. But if you are in the frame mode, that's going to be interesting. Let's come over here, for example, at 3 seconds and decide that you want to shrink or rotate it a bit. So I will rotate it just like this randomly, it doesn't matter. And I will shrink it a bit. Now, the changes that you have done here are keyframed. You can see a keyframe over here. You have a keyframe in the beginning, keyframe at the end, and you have this keyframe here. Actually, the frame level is gonna interpolate the changes that you have done from the previous keyframe. That's the first keyframe. And if you play, notice how it's gonna change and move the window according to the next keyframe. You notice, guys, in fact, I didn't have to do any more tracking. It did it automatically. You can navigate through keyframes using the keyframe navigator here. So if I come over here and I decide, okay, I want to make it smaller. Okay, we're taking an example. Notice what's going to happen. From the beginning, it's going to start interpolate for all the keyframes. So at this point here, it's going to get smaller. Notice we are at this time. And then, of course, it's continuing later on. So notice how it's working on the tracker here. Right? So this is the first interpolation for this keyframe. And then you have another interpolation. So actually, tracking and animating the tracker is very easy, very simple, and you can do any changes that you want. I will undo the two keyframes here, and let's add some color adjustments. For example, I will take up the gain, make her face brighter, take down the shadows, okay? Now she's looking a bit different. Then you can create an outside node. That's what we usually do. And in the outside node, now you will adjust the environment from outside. I'm gonna do something just like this, you know, take it down even more and take the rifts down. Okay, so she's looking like, I don't know, outstanding, whatever you like. Let me come back to the node. If the tracker is not working very fine with you, you can decide to remove the pan, the tilt, the zoom, any one of them, and do another tracking. So actually, it's very easy to use the tracker in DaVinci Resolve, and I encourage you to start tracking. We didn't do a great job here, because we're talking about the tracker. The point tracker. Within the tracker, in window, of course, you will go to cloud tracker or point tracker. The cloud tracker will track a whole region or a surface. The point tracker, on the other hand, will track a single point. It is very useful when things are getting mixed up within the window and you're losing the tracking. Let's see how it works. First of all, you have to add a window. And then I will add here just a circle window, for example. Just put it anywhere. It really doesn't matter where you put it. If you want to use the point tracker, later on you can adjust it the way you would like. I'll just put it over here. Then you come back to the tracker itself and select a point tracker. Now, if you try to track now, it will tell you no live features to track. This is because you need to select a single point to track. And the way to do that is by using the add track point just over here. You click on it and you have a blue cross opening for you, and this is the track point. This is the point that's going to be tracked. You can adjust it the way you would like and put it on any spot you deem that's what you want to track. Okay, I will do something like this to see it. So now I want to track this single point just over here, this white point. Then if you go back to 100%, let's see it clearly, and you start tracking, you notice that it's tracking whatever you put on this point and is disregarding everything else. And also you notice that the window is following the track point over here. Now it has completed. If you come and play, notice that the window is following the track point. Now as simple as this, you can set your window the way you would like, whatever you like. Let's say you want to put something on the forehead, or you want to play around. Okay, something just like this, just to show you. Now if you play, you will notice that the window is following the track point that you have tracked. Okay, this is about the track point. It's very useful from time to time when things get confusing when you're tracking the whole window. How to introduce blur, sharpness, or mist to your video. In the blur tab, you will have three options: blur, sharpen, and mist. Let's stick to blur first, and you have a radius, horizontal and vertical ratio, and the scaling. The scaling will work only in sharpen and mist. On the radius, if you go up, you will be introducing blur. If you go down, you will be introducing sharpness. If you notice now, they are all ganged, the RGB, and you are introducing blur or sharpness to all the colors. You can ungang and then introduce, for example, sharpness to the red, and introduce more sharpness to the green, and then introduce some blur to the red, or whatever you like. For example, something like this, depending on what you're working on. You have a very nice effect here. I already said that. You have the horizontal and vertical ratio. Let's zoom in a bit, and let's introduce some blur. Now notice, if you go up within the ratio, you will be introducing some horizontal blur. If you go down, you will be introducing some vertical blur. You can also ungang them and introduce vertical or horizontal blur to a certain color if you want to. Here you have something like this. I will reset this one. After the blur, you have the sharpen, which will work exactly like blur. If you go up, you introduce blur. Down, you will introduce sharpness within the radius. And if you introduce sharpness, you can use the horizontal vertical ratio to go vertical or horizontal the way you will want. You have the scaling, where you can introduce more sharpness for all the colors or less sharpness for all the colors. So you will adjust your sharpness here, and you can manipulate it a bit with the scaling so you can get the right results that you want. Within sharpen, you have two other properties: the coring softness and the level. I will go to maximum sharpness. The level will act on the edges. Notice how the edges are gonna be less sharpened, okay, or more sharpened. The default is 0. Now you have the coring effect. If you add the level, it will affect anything else but the edges. Here you are. You notice you are not touching the edges. Let's reset all this, and let's go now to the mist. The mist is a mixture of blur and sharpen. If you go up on the radius, you will add some blur. If you go down, you will add some sharpness, and you have the scaling that can help you also adjust the sharpness. Of course, it will be interesting to take the colors separately. You can also play with the mix that will allow you to mix a bit more the sharpness and the blur. So the blur tab will help you introduce sharpness and blur and mist to your video. The sizing tab. Within the sizing tab, you have several options: the edit sizing, input, output, node, and reference sizing. We will see later on when doing color grading. In the edit sizing, you have several properties that you can change. For example, you can pan to the right or to the left. You can tilt if you like, take it up. You can rotate it a bit. When you work with the edit sizing, it's similar to working in the edit page. And you notice here in the transform, you have done the same editing. If you reset from here or do the changes from here, you also have them in the color page. So edit sizing is similar to editing the transform within the edit page. You also have the input sizing. The input sizing is about sizing the input. This is the input point. So you will size before you get to any node. For example, if you pan left or right, you notice it's not even registered in the node here. You are just doing this on the input level. I already said that. You also have the output sizing. The output sizing, if you notice, is jump to the timeline. So any sizing you do in the output sizing will affect all the timeline. For example, if you use the blanking or the cropping, you crop 100 from top and 100 from bottom. You will notice that all other clips also have been cropped. Now notice within the timeline, you did not create any node. The output sizing is working on this output point just over here. There are no nodes affected. I will reset this. If you come to node sizing, of course, you have to go to the clip and you will select a node. Select this clip. You will select a node and do your sizing from here. This is a pan, for example, a tilt, a zoom, whatever you like. If you notice, the node sizing has happened inside the node and it's showing you the sizing icon just over here. If you go to the edit page, nothing has happened here. The transform remain unchanged. If you reset from here, nothing will be affected within the timeline because you did all this resizing on a certain node. And of course, all the other nodes remain unchanged and not affected by this resizing. The reference sizing is about resizing when you are using the gallery here. For example, grab a still and you want to view two stills at the same time. We'll see that later in detail when you're doing color grading. I will just undo. This is about the sizing tab and its options. Thank you. I'll see you in the next lecture.